Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. Chapter 35. He did not leave for Cambridge the next day, as he had said he would. He deferred his departure a whole week, and during that time he made me feel what severe punishment a good yet stern, a conscientious yet implacable man can inflict on one who has offended him. Without one overt act of hostility, one upbraiding word, he contrived to impress me momently with the conviction that I was put beyond the pale of his favour. The night before he left home, happening to see him walking in the garden about sunset, and remembering as I looked at him that this man, alienated as he now was, had once saved my life, and that we were near relations, I was moved to make a last attempt to regain his friendship. I went out and approached him as he stood leaning over the little gate. I spoke to the point at once. "St. John, I am unhappy because you are still angry with me. Let us be friends." "I hope we are friends," was the unmoved reply, while he stood watching the rising of the moon, which he had been contemplating as I approached. "No, St. John, we are not friends as we were. You know that." "Are we not? That is wrong. For my part, I wish you no ill, and all good." "I believe you, St. John, for I am sure you are incapable of wishing any one ill. But as I am your kinswoman, I should desire somewhat more of affection than that sort of general philanthropy you extend to mere strangers." "Of course," he said, "your wish is reasonable, and I am far from regarding you as a stranger." "Must we part in this way, St. John? And when you go to India, will you leave me so, without a kinder word than you have yet spoken?" He now turned quite from the moon, and faced me. "When I go to India, Jane, will I leave you? What? Do you not go to India?" "You said I could not unless I married you." "And you will not marry me? You adhere to that resolution?" "No. St. John, I will not marry you. I adhere to my resolution." The avalanche had shaken and slid a little forward, but it did not yet crash down. "Once more, why this refusal?" he asked. "Formerly," I answered, "because you did not love me. Now, I reply, because you almost hate me. If I were to marry you, you would kill me. You are killing me now." His lips and cheeks turned white, quite white. "I should kill you. I am killing you. Your words are such as ought not to be used, violent, unfeminine, and untrue." "You utterly misinterpret my words," I said, at once seizing his hand. "I have no intention to grieve or pain you. Indeed, I have not." Most bitterly he smiled. Most decidedly he withdrew his hand from mine. "And now you recall your promise, and will not go to India at all, I presume?" said he, after a considerable pause. "Yes, I will, as your assistant," I answered. A very long silence succeeded. He answered emphatically but calmly, "A female curate, who is not my wife, would never suit me. With me, then, it seems you cannot go. But if you are sincere in your offer, I will, while in town, speak to a married missionary, whose wife needs a coadjutor. Your own fortune will make you independent of the Society's aid, and thus you may still be spared the dishonour of breaking your promise and deserting the band you engaged to join." Now I never had, as the reader knows, either given any formal promise or entered into any engagement, and this language was all much too hard and much too despotic for the occasion. I replied, "There is no dishonour, no breach of promise, no desertion in the case. I am not under the slightest obligation to go to India, especially with strangers. With you I would have ventured much, because I admire, confide in, and as a sister I love you. But I am convinced that, go when and with whom I would, I should not live long in that climate." "Ah, you are afraid of yourself," he said, curling his lip. "I am. God did not give me my life to throw away, and to do as you wish me would, I begin to think, be almost equivalent to committing suicide. Moreover, before I definitively resolve on quitting England, I will know for certain whether I cannot be of greater use by remaining in it than by leaving it." "What do you mean?" It would be fruitless to attempt to explain, but there is a point on which I have long endured painful doubt, and I can go nowhere till by some means that doubt is removed. I know where your heart turns and to what it clings. The interest you cherish is lawless and unconsecrated. Long since you ought to have crushed it. Now you should blush to allude to it. You think of Mr. Rochester?" It was true. I confessed it by silence. "Are you going to seek Mr. Rochester?" "I must find out what has become of him." "It remains for me, then," he said, "to remember you in my prayers, and to entreat God for you in all earnestness that you may not indeed become a castaway. I had thought I recognized in you one of the chosen, but God sees not as man sees. His will be done." He opened the gate, passed through it, and strayed away down the glen. During that meal he appeared just as composed as usual. I had thought he would hardly speak to me, and I was certain he had given up the pursuit of his matrimonial scheme. The sequel showed I was mistaken on both points. He addressed me precisely in his ordinary manner, or what had of late been his ordinary manner, one scrupulously polite. No doubt he had invoked the help of the Holy Spirit to subdue the anger I had roused in him, and now believed he had forgiven me once more. The prayer over, we took leave of him. He was to go at a very early hour in the morning. Diana and Mary, having kissed him, left the room, in compliance, I think, with a whispered hint from him. I tendered my hand and wished him a pleasant journey. "Thank you, Jane. As I said, I shall return from Cambridge in a fortnight. That space, then, is yet left to you for reflection. If I listened to human pride, I should say no more to you of marriage with me. But I listen to my duty, and keep steadily in view my very first aim, to do all things to the glory of God. My master was long-suffering, so will I be. I cannot give you up to perdition as a vessel of wrath. Repent, resolve, while there is yet time." He laid his hand on my head as he uttered the last words. He had spoken earnestly, mildly. His look was not indeed that of a lover beholding his mistress, but it was that of a pastor recalling his wandering sheep, or better, of a guardian angel watching the soul for which he is responsible. I stood motionless under my hierophant's touch. My refusals were forgotten, my fears overcome, my wrestlings paralyzed. The impossible, i.e. my marriage with St. John, was fast becoming the possible. All was changing utterly with a sudden sweep. Religion called, angels beckoned, God commanded, life rolled together like a scroll, death's gates opening, showed eternity beyond. It seemed that for safety and bliss there, all here might be sacrificed in a second. The dim room was full of visions. "Could you decide now?" asked the missionary. The inquiry was put in gentle tones. He drew me to him as gently. Oh, that gentleness! How far more potent is it than force! I could resist St. John's wrath. I grew pliant as a reed under his kindness. Yet I knew all the time, if I yielded now, I should not the less be made to repent, some day, of my former rebellion. His nature was not changed by 1 hour of solemn prayer. It was only elevated. "I could decide if I were but certain," I answered. "Were I but convinced that it is God's will I should marry you, I could vow to marry you here and now, come afterwards what would." "My prayers are heard," ejaculated St. John. He pressed his hand firmer on my head, as if he claimed me. Show me the path," I entreated of heaven. I was excited more than I had ever been, and whether what followed was the effect of excitement the reader shall judge. All the house was still, for I believe all except St. John and myself were now retired to rest. The one candle was dying out. The room was full of moonlight. My heart beat fast and thick. I heard its throb. Suddenly it stood still to an inexpressible feeling that thrilled it through, and passed at once to my head and extremities. The feeling was not like an electric shock, but it was quite as sharp, as strange, as startling. It acted on my senses as if their utmost activity hitherto had been but torpor, from which they were now summoned and forced to wake. They rose expectant. Eye and ear waited while the flesh quivered on my bones. "What have you heard? What do you see?" asked St. John. I saw nothing, but I heard a voice somewhere cry, "Jane! Jane! Jane!" Nothing more. "Oh, God! What is it?" I gasped. I might have said, "Where is it?" for it did not seem in the room, nor in the house, nor in the garden. It did not come out of the air, nor from under the earth, nor from overhead. I had heard it, where or whence forever impossible to know, and it was the voice of a human being, a known, loved, well-remembered voice, that of Edward Fairfax Rochester, and it spoke in pain and woe, wildly, eerily, urgently. "I am coming!" I cried. "Wait for me! Oh, I will come!" I flew to the door and looked into the passage. It was dark. I ran out into the garden. It was void. "Where are you?" I exclaimed. I broke from St. John, who had followed and would have detained me. It was my time to assume ascendancy. My powers were in play and in force. I told him to forbear question or remark. I desired him to leave me. I must and would be alone. He obeyed at once. Where there is energy to command well enough, obedience never fails. I mounted to my chamber, locked myself in, fell on my knees, and prayed in my way, a different way to St. John's, but effective in its own fashion. I seemed to penetrate very near a mighty spirit, and my soul rushed out in gratitude at his feet. I rose from the thanksgiving, took a resolve, and lay down, unscared, enlightened, eager but for the daylight. Chapter 36. The daylight came. I rose at dawn. I busied myself for an hour or two with arranging my things in my chamber, drawers, and wardrobe, in the order wherein I should wish to leave them during a brief absence. Meantime I heard St. John quit his room. He stopped at my door. I feared he would knock. No, but a slip of paper was passed under the door. I took it up. It bore these words: "You left me too suddenly last night. Had you stayed but a little longer, you would have laid your hand on the Christian's cross and the angel's crown. I shall expect your clear decision when I return this day fortnight. Meantime, watch and pray that you enter not into temptation. The spirit, I trust, is willing, but the flesh, I see, is weak. I shall pray for you hourly. Yours, St. John." At breakfast I announced to Diana and Mary that I was going a journey, and should be absent at least 4 days. "Alone, Jane?" they asked. "Yes. It was to see or hear news of a friend about whom I had for some time been uneasy." I left Moor House at 3:00 p.m., and soon after 4 I stood at the foot of the sign-post of Whitcross, waiting the arrival of the coach which was to take me to distant Thornfield. It was a journey of 36 hours. I had set out from Whitcross on a Tuesday afternoon, and early on the succeeding Thursday morning the coach stopped to water the horses at a wayside inn. "How far is Thornfield Hall from here?" I asked of the ostler. "Just 2 miles, mum, across the fields." My journey is closed, I thought to myself. I got out of the coach, gave a box I had into the ostler's charge, to be kept till I called for it, paid my fare, satisfied the coachman. At last the woods rose. The rookery clustered dark. A loud cawing broke the morning stillness. Strange delight inspired me. On I hastened. Another field crossed, a lane threaded, and there were the courtyard walls, the back offices, the house itself, the rookery still hid. The front was, as I had once seen it in a dream, but a well-like wall, very high and very fragile-looking, perforated with paneless windows. No roof, no battlements, no chimneys. All had crashed in. And there was the silence of death about it, the solitude of a lonesome wild. No wonder that letters addressed to people here had never received an answer. As well dispatch epistles to a vault in a church aisle. The grim blackness of the stones told by what fate the hall had fallen, by conflagration. But how kindled? What story belonged to this disaster? What loss besides mortar and marble and woodwork had followed upon it? Had life been wrecked as well as property? If so, whose? Dreadful question. There was no one here to answer it, not even dumb sign, mute token. Some answer must be had to these questions. I could find it nowhere but at the inn, and thither ere long I returned. The host himself brought my breakfast into the parlour. I requested him to shut the door and to sit down. I had some questions to ask him. But when he complied, I scarcely knew how to begin, such horror had I of the possible answers. And yet the spectacle of desolation I had just left prepared me in a measure for a tale of misery. The host was a respectable-looking, middle-aged man. "You know Thornfield Hall, of course?" I managed to say at last. "Yes, ma'am. I lived there once." "Did you? Not in my time, I thought. You are a stranger to me." "I was the late Mr. Rochester's butler," he added. The late? I seemed to have received with full force the blow I had been trying to evade. "The late!" I gasped. "Is he dead?" "I mean the present gentleman, Mr. Edward's father." "Is Mr. Rochester living at Thornfield Hall now?" I asked, knowing of course what the answer would be, but yet desirous of deferring the direct question as to where he really was. "No, mum. Oh, no, no one is living there. I suppose you are a stranger in these parts, or you would have heard what happened last autumn. Thornfield Hall is quite a ruin. It was burned down just about harvest time. A dreadful calamity. Such an immense quantity of valuable property destroyed. Was it known how it originated?" I demanded. "They guessed, ma'am, they guessed. Indeed, I should say it was ascertained beyond a doubt. You are not perhaps aware," he continued, edging his chair a little nearer the table and speaking low, "that there was a lady, a lunatic, kept in the house? It's quite certain that it was her, and nobody but her, that set it going. On this night she set fire first to the hangings of the room next her own, and then she got down to a lower story, and made her way to the chamber that had been the governess's. She was like as if she knew somehow matters had gone on, and had a spite at her, and she kindled the bed there, but there was nobody sleeping in it, fortunately. The governess had run away 2 months before, and for all Mr. Rochester sought her as if she'd been the most precious thing he had in the world, he never could hear a word of her, and he grew savage, quite savage on his disappointment. He never was a wild man, but he got dangerous after he lost her. He would be alone, too. He sent Mrs. Fairfax, the housekeeper, away to her friends at a distance, but he did it handsomely, for he settled an annuity on her for life, and she deserved it. She was a very good woman. Miss Adele, a ward he had, was put to school. He broke off acquaintance with all the gentry, and shut himself up like a hermit at the Hall." "What? Did he not leave England?" "Leave England? Bless you, no. He would not cross the door-stones of the house except at night, when he walked just like a ghost about the grounds and in the orchard as if he had lost his senses." "Then Mr. Rochester was at home when the fire broke out?" "Yes, indeed was he. And he went up to the attics when all was burning above and below, and got the servants out of their beds and helped them down himself, and went back to get his mad wife out of her cell. And then they called out to him that she was on the roof, and where she was standing, waving her arms above the battlements, and shouting out till they could hear her a mile off. I saw her and heard her with my own eyes. She was a big woman, and had long black hair. We could see it streaming against the flames as she stood. I witnessed, and several more witnessed, Mr. Rochester ascend through the skylight to the roof. We heard him call Bertha. We saw him approach her. And then, mum, she yelled and gave a spring, and the next minute she lay smashed on the pavement." "Dead?" "Dead. Ay, dead as the stones on which her brains and blood were scattered." "Good God!" "You may well say so, ma'am. It was frightful." He shuddered. "And afterwards?" I urged. "Well, ma'am, afterwards the house was burnt to the ground. There are only some bits of walls standing now." "Were any other lives lost?" "No. Perhaps it would have been better if there had." "What do you mean?" "Poor Mr. Edward!" he ejaculated. "I little thought ever to have seen it. He was taken out from under the ruins, alive, but sadly hurt. A beam had fallen in such a way as to protect him partly, but one eye was knocked out, and one hand so crushed that Mr. Carter, the surgeon, had to amputate it directly. The other eye inflamed, he lost the sight of that also. He is now helpless indeed, blind and a cripple." "Where is he? Where does he live now?" "At Ferndean, a manor house on a farm he has, about 30 miles off. Quite a desolate spot." "Who is with him?" "Old John and his wife. He would have none else. He is quite broken down, they say." "Have you any sort of conveyance?" "We have a chaise, ma'am, a very handsome chaise." "Let it be got ready instantly, and if your post-boy can drive me to Ferndean before dark this day, I'll pay both you and him twice the hire you usually demand."